Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us, the Mirror's chief football writer John Cross and chief sports feature writer at the Daily Mail, Riyadh Al-Samurai. Welcome to you guys. Let's quickly run you through the back pages. The Mail leading with the news involving Raheem Sterling, Sterling's home-break-in horror. And they carry the story that tennis star Emma Raducanu is England's new ace in the pack. The Sun lead with the headline, Kick Van Dijk. Roo slams Kop skipper again and then tells him to ignore the noise. And there's only two Alex Scotts. And the Express splash with Adapt or Die. James warns of World Cup boiling point. In the Telegraph, Borthwick hits back at All Blacks as England unveil their weapon. And the Times, England trust in Pom squad for All Blacks. And an ace in the pack at line out. Burglars target Sterling's home. Gents, great to have you with us. Crossy, let's start, shall we, with the Express. Adapt or die, and a big picture of Reece James holding up the Club World Cup. He knows what the temperatures are going to be like, and James warns of World Cup boiling point. Go into this one for us.
Well, it was really interesting, Will, today to speak to Reece James. England camp, obviously, looking forward to Thursday's game against Serbia. Reece James, Chelsea captain, England defender, played at the Club World Cup in the summer, a tournament I was there and basically covered in great detail. And honestly, the heat and the conditions, it really defined the tournament. And I do think FIFA will have to find solutions like kickoff times, where they play games and the scheduling and whatnot, really. And Reece James really highlighting, speaking well about this. Reece James is quite a quiet, softly spoken guy, but actually doesn't say a lot really, but kind of gets his message across quite well and really put it across powerfully today, just as sort of saying how difficult the conditions will be for a team like England, used to European conditions, of course. Listen, we've all been to, the States, to cover sporting events, those of us in the industry, lucky enough to do that. But I do think in recent times, climate change has had a massive impact to the detriment, and basically it's going to be a massive factor. I think the weather, over 40 degrees heat, sometimes you had kickoff times at the Club World Cup at sort of lunchtime. And honestly, that is just too much for the players. I personally, I thought it crossed the line. It was dangerous. You had, electric storms. And Reece James talking in depth about this, about sort of the fears and the worries that he might have, the England players should have, and why they need to be so well prepared. It was good to, get a player's perspective who's actually played in those conditions and really put it out there, discuss it and make it a talking point again, because I'm sure that FIFA, they've already hinted that they might switch the kickoff times a little bit, will be on it and will need to adapt and will need to tweak things ahead of next summer.
Riyadh, the Mirror also go with this story. It's Reece lightning, Chelsea star. It'll be hard for us to win in the US with the heat and the weather. Cross, you just mentioned there the 40-degree temperatures, but Reece James in the Mirror also going into talking about substandard pitches. Is this going to be seen, Riyadh, as negativity and what should be a really positive World Cup for England, and excuses already?
I think it's just realism. Well, I mean, historically, England have found it harder in those World Cups played outside of Europe. All European sides have done. I think in history only 2 European nations have won outside of Europe. So it's clearly a relevant thing. I think if we were to go through the pecking order of England's challenges, I'd probably make the point that central defence and whoever partners Declan Rice are probably the bigger question marks for them than the weather at this point. There's stuff they can do to mitigate it, and Tuchel's sort of spoken about it a bit previously. He's had them training in heated tents, working on watt bikes, monitoring internal temperatures with these things aren't aren't necessarily new. We've seen it with the BOA and the sort of British Olympic team sort of swallowing micro pills which contain sort of internal tracking devices that sort of monitor your temperature and everything else. So they'll have a core idea of how their bodies are going to react, and then it becomes a question of whether they can overcome it. I mean, look, I was thinking slightly out of the box on it. Does it influence squad selection, for instance, in terms of players who are proven for the heat? And I suppose the reason I'm saying that is to kind of crowbar in some mention of Ivan Toney. He's obviously one of those guys who it's coming up again this week. Does he want a move back over here? It's a World Cup season, etc., etc. Is there any mileage, therefore, in bringing over a player who has been playing in scorching heat lately? So, is there anything in that, quite aside from the fact of a backup to Harry Kane? I do wonder if those thoughts have come into Tuchel's mind. Evidently not. He's, we're still waiting to see sort of Tony come back in at that kind of level. But when it comes to these narratives, I do think they're valid, because going over there and expecting guys from this climate, and I'm sure all of us in this conversation can relate to looking outside this month at stinking grey skies, it's quite different to going out and playing in 35 degrees plus. And I think there was the warning back in the summer, wasn't it? 14 out of the 16 stadiums were experiencing weather that they described as, on average, possibly dangerous. Despite the sort of verbosity of that, we know what that means. So it is going to be a significant factor for them. I don't think it's an excuse as such.
John, let's talk about a story in the Independent. Alex Scott, over the moon with England call-up 6 years on from non-league days. I interviewed him after the game at Aston Villa at the weekend. Lovely guy, and an incredible story, isn't it? Was playing for Guernsey FC. In fact, in 2020, absolutely incredible, his rise.
Absolutely brilliant. What a great story, isn't it? And you'll know from speaking to him, what a really nice guy. I've done a couple of interviews with him myself in the past. I was more focused on Reece James today, and sort of colleagues spoke to Alex Scott, who's sort of kind of the main auditorium, and he really captured the room. He's just got a likeable style about him. He's got a kind of a confident way, but not arrogance. He's kind of really focused on sort of reaching the top, sort of nice stories, knockabout stuff about being the other Alex Scott in the sort of kind of football. Obviously, we're talking about kind of the BBC presenter and kind of future star of, I'm a Celebrity. Just really good fun, really sort of kind of finding his way through non-league, out of Guernsey, if you like, and sort of kind of progressing through Bristol City and then into the Premier League. And what's really impressed me, I think, is that, he looked at home today. He spoke incredibly well with a confidence, and already fits into that kind of style that Tuchel prefers. He often goes for a 4-2-3-1. So, it's worth noting, isn't it, that basically he's played alongside Elliot Anderson already for the under-21s at the base of that midfield, does similar for Bournemouth. He's been one of the revelations of Bournemouth, this season, hasn't he? Bournemouth have been a great story. I know they didn't have a great result at the weekend, but wow, what a great feel-good story they've been. And he's been right at the heart of that. And I think it's really great that Thomas Tuchel, who myself included, wondered whether he'd bring through players for the future, if you like, give the sort of the next generation a chance now, because it's obviously win or bust next summer, that he is looking to the real outstanding young talent that is coming through. And there's none more so, I think, than Alex Scott, because I think that's a great story. I love his attitude, love his determination, and he's a smashing player.
Yeah, absolutely. And Riyadh in the star, I'm the man, Alex Scott. He's certainly not overconfident when you meet him. He is an infectious character. And in fact, when I spoke to him on Sunday, I said, Nigel Pearson always said you were going to play for England. He's not done it yet, though, is he? And fair play to Bristol City in this development as well. Antoine Semenyo, and of course, now Alex Scott in that England squad. Riyadh.
He's a lovely player, and I think we've had this conversation for a while about what England do in terms of those kind of classic, say, number 6 style players. I wouldn't really want to pigeonhole Alex Scott, because I think he can play 6-8. I think he's got a little bit of a 10 in him as well. So, he has that technical ability. He's obviously great off the ball, but he's also incredibly comfortable on it as well. So he does bring them options, and I think it's quite interesting. And Crossy will know more about this than me. It looks like Tuchel wants to bring 5 central midfielders with him to the World Cup. Does it come down to Scott or Wharton for that last slot? I wonder. I think he's in a good place to have a look at him now this week. I think, what else are you going to use these games for if not trying new things? So I'd like to see him. I'd like to see him get some minutes in these games and be more than just sort of integrated around the squad group, and actually see how he does cope in that newer environment. But going to everything sort of John saying a moment ago, we do get kind of conditioned sometimes to these perfect stories. Or when I say perfect stories, I mean these sort of perfect, neat, lineal rises of people coming through an academy, and everything falls into place. It's lovely. This guy is released by Southampton, plays for Guernsey, comes through Bristol City. I mean, there's a broader conversation here, of course, about the pyramid as well, because we're seeing that's now supplying so much of the England squad. But no, this it's a lovely story. I can't, unlike you two, I can't say that I've spoken to him directly, but he comes across really well, and he looks really happy to be there as well. So no, like I say, the biggest hope I think would be to actually see him get some minutes, do well, and try and make it a little bit of an awkward conversation about those midfield roles and who goes in the final squad.
Riyadh, this Sterling story's in your paper, but Crossy, you pick up on it. Sterling's home break-in in the Daily Mail, home break-in horror, star in-house with children when targeted for the second time in 3 years. Nothing surprises us, Crossy, in this crazy world. But, the guy's only 30, he's not playing football, and now he's got this stuff to deal with again.
Yeah, I feel really sorry for him. I like Raheem Sterling. I really have got a great deal of respect for him as a footballer, as a person, and as a real sort of kind of shining light. He's been such a fantastic sort of ambassador, I think, and strength for English football down the years. I mean, it was shocking really for him to go through something similar a little bit, in 2022 when his family was subjected to it during the Qatar World Cup, and to go through it again, is really, really devastating. Yeah, it's a story we cover in our news pages, and we're making the point in our news pages that basically Sterling is the real hero here. And basically, this is a devoted dad who basically, was at home with his kids and his family. Basically, heard a noise upstairs in the bedroom and went and took on the 5 raiders who were upstairs, sort of in the family home, having ushered his family and kids to safety first, of course. And really, I just think that sort of kind of says so much about the person and the individual. What an absolutely terrorising story. The Raiders must have thought that he was out, because obviously Chelsea playing later that night. It happened about 7:00 Saturday. And honestly, I think people will look at this story and go, wow, Sterling, that is devastating for his family. Imagine the kind of the trauma and everything that they have to go through, but also praise the kind of the reaction and response from a really heroic footballer who kind of stands up. Listen, as any father would, of course, but honestly, Sterling, deserves some real credit and some praise for his heroic actions, to really safeguard his family here as well as the shocking events, obviously, which unfolded.
Absolutely. Well said, Crossy. We will take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning's papers, including this in the Sun. Kick Van Dijk. Rue slams Kop skipper again, and then tells him to ignore the noise. You are watching Back Pages tonight, and welcome back to the Mirror's John Cross and the Daily Mail's Riyadh Al Samurai. Let's go to the Sun now, and a story involving Wayne Rooney, guys, and Virgil van Dijk. What do you make of this, Riyadh? Virgil's Wayne Payne, kick Van Dijk, Rue slams Kop skipper again, and then tells him to ignore the noise.
Wait until they get brought face to face after a match again. That was quite fun the other day, wasn't it? Look, I think Rooney has actually rode back a little bit on what he said. Sort of, he's sort of tried to clarify that Van Dijk hasn't, in fact, down tools since signing a contract. He seems to have had a slight change of heart about that. I think fundamentally, though, if the critique is directed more at Van Dijk's performances, I think they would be valid. That doesn't make Van Dijk an outlier within Liverpool's season. We've spoken plenty about that previously this season, but we do know that he is the heartbeat of that team, and when his level goes down, it brings the collective with it, and likewise when his level goes up, they win titles. So, I think Rooney's initial observation was probably right. It has been an inconsistent season for Van Dijk, but he's obviously still got a bit of bite about him. He wasn't afraid to sort of spell out his alternative view to Rooney on it after the game. So no, fair play to him. But no, it's been quite a fun one to watch.
Yeah, it certainly was. Crossy in the mirror, on the top right of the mirror there, Rude, just chill out, Van, man. And let me just bring you the quote which you can pick up on. He says, from a performance level, I don't think that he's been at the level he has this season. I think getting involved too much in the outside noise, that's our job. Focus on your game. That's the re-dig. That's Rooney going in again, right?
Yeah, to a degree, I think. Basically, I think Rooney has proven to be a really good pundit, and I think he's got lots to say. And basically, I think he's sort of kind of not afraid to say it. I think some sort of former players, particularly ones very recently retired, sort of kind of shy away from players that they might have faced on the pitch and so on. But I do like Rooney. He's got something to say. He's obviously got the gravitas to say it as well, because he's been there, experienced it, and he's probably right. I actually think, because some of that ignore the noise thing really seems to, strike a chord with me. At the weekend, it was a really damaging, bruising defeat for Liverpool, wasn't it? And how do you pick yourselves up from that and sort of kind of, shy away from the criticism? And we have referred to that kind of on the pitch interview, which did kind of cackle with tension, wasn't it? Really, and I think sometimes it's probably healthy for players to kind of, speak their minds, say something. Van Dijk didn't shy away from the confrontation, and nor did Rooney. It was good to see, really. So, I think Van Dijk is a brilliant player, one of the absolute greats of the Premier League era as a defender. But right now, he is struggling as much as anyone, I think, in that Liverpool defence. He's struggling to hold it together. And I'm sorry, but sometimes you've got to speak your mind and be sort of kind of fair with the criticism. I think that's exactly what Rooney has done.
A little line at the bottom of the mirror, but, big story, Riyadh. Ronaldo, this is my last World Cup, which I guess isn't the biggest surprise in the world, bearing in mind he's going to be 41 in February. He's gone on to say, hasn't he, that he wants to score 1,000 goals, Riyadh. He's not going to be happy till he's got 1,000, and he's, on 953?
He'll get to his 1,000. I mean, he's still scoring them by the sackload in Saudi Arabia. I think, look, clearly he's going to be 41 by the time of the next World Cup, and even Ronaldo has limits. I mean, look, to be quite frank, I thought he was very poor in the Euros, and I think I wrote at the time, in fact, about Roberto Martinez. I thought his management of that was quite weak, given the squad that Portugal took to Germany, and the way they performed by accommodating this person who wasn't willing to press or do the work off the ball. That system, that team could have really played effectively. I think it really held Portugal back. Now, all of that being said, we are talking about a tremendous player who is by far exceeding the boundaries of what is normally possible for an elite level player in his 40s. Even if you go through his stats this year. He's a goal a game in Saudi Arabia. We can talk all day about the level over there, but in the first half of the show, I was talking about making a case for Ivan Toney with England. Ronaldo, at 11 years older than him, is scoring more goals in Saudi Arabia. So there's a little bit of context about where his level is at. As for getting to 1,000, there is not a chance that man will retire before he hits four figures. I think we can probably all reliably bet on that.
I think, Crossy, that's the thing, isn't it? The cynics would say that this is a World Cup too far and that Roberto Martinez should have already had the conversation with him.
Yeah, it does feel like that. I do think we've sort of kind of approached that sort of view with the last 2/3 tournaments. He's just such an all-time great. You've just got to give him credit, and massive, credit. But he isn't that overbearing figure sometimes, and it feels like he can be the most important player, most demanding, player on the pitch, and that's the point, isn't it? Sometimes you've got this great figure, an absolute legend of the game. But, do the players, even as good experience, and winning sort of Portuguese internationals, really want to kind of do things themselves, or to see the guy to the other side and basically you've got Cristiano screaming for the ball? Well, what are you going to do? It's bound to affect your mentality, and it does impinge, I think, on that squad mentality. And there's no doubt about it. He's not the unbelievable superstar that he once was, and I do think listen, I'd love to see him go out with a great hurrah and one last goodbye, and it would be an amazing story if they can do really well in the tournament. So let's hope he goes out with a bang, because honestly, he really deserves it. But I think for the sake of the squad, I do think maybe the manager should have had the conversation, or a really good pal should have had a good conversation with him. Maybe Piers Morgan should have, but a while ago, and just sort of said, look, come on, Cristiano, give someone else a go. Because, an all-time great, nothing should detract from that. But I do think, it shouldn't surprise us, but maybe it does, that it'll be his last World Cup.
It's a bit like you, Crossy, at the Mirror, isn't it? Everyone's just waiting in the wings.
Don't say that. Don't tempt fate.
Riyadh, look, massive game at Twickenham on Saturday. England against the All Blacks. The Daily Telegraph. Borthwick hits back at All Blacks coach, riled as rivals say that they anticipate kicking onslaught. Bomb squad, bench named in the big Twickenham gamble. And a picture that you can see there of a beaming Emma Raducanu. England unveil their secret weapon, Riyadh. From line-outs to line calls.
Yeah. Look, I saw that Raducanu came by, and they've had Hertzler in also during the week. It looked to me like I think Borthwick's like a lot of coaches in all sports now. They want to have that kind of cross-pollination of ideas. I think it usually is very much a two-way thing. I imagine, having an idea of what Hertzler's like, he would have been fairly studious in his trip to see them as well. I think in terms of this game, we saw England. They looked good against Fiji. This is a real litmus test of where they're at. It's the All Blacks. It's the mystique. It's everything that goes around it against a truly elite side. I quite enjoy this POM squad reference. They're going to have a bench full of British and Irish Lions players, so they're looking to finish strong. That's a big thing for Borthwick. Yeah. George Ford in at fly half as well. I think it's set up to be a really exciting game.
Yeah. Guys, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your company. If you missed any of the show, there's another chance to see Backpages tonight at hour, and the show's also available as a podcast. Just download Backpages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And join us again on Wednesday night. The guest will be Charlie Wyatt and Henry Winter from Sports Illustrated. Next, we will hear from this man, Alex Scott, who's targeting a place in the England squad for next summer.